Okay, so this is the first, I guess, Blue Banner meeting or interview of Surviving SCA. So if you could just say your name, your age, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Kim Ruether. I am 54 years old and I live in Northern Alberta, Canada. I grew up on a farm and our family had a little family farm and with cows and grain, and I work in X-ray. And I had 4 kids and I am an artist. I love painting and pottery and all that stuff.
Oh, that's fun. I like pottery too.
Yeah.
um, so I know that this is a little bit hard, but could you tell us a little bit about your experience, I guess, with sudden cardiac arrest?
Absolutely. So being that I've worked in X-ray since I was 20, I had seen cardiac arrest cases, at work, and so I knew that old people had cardiac arrests, and not just old people, but like middle-aged people. And then on May 22nd, it was the Tuesday after the long weekend, I had worked and then I came home. And when I came into the house, Brock was sitting at the island and he was working on some homework and he was uncomfortable and he says, "So Mom, I got a really bad mark on my math test." And I was kind of grumpy because it had been a long day at work. And so I was actually kind of a bitch to him. And I was like, "Oh, well, you need to work harder," and all this stuff. Long story short, he went to the volleyball practice that evening. And when he left, because I had coached volleyball, he said, "Maybe you want to come along with me?" He asked me again. And I was in the bathroom getting ready. I was going to have a bath. And so he poked his head around and said, "Do you want to come?" And I said, "No, and you better get that math mark up or you're not going to go to another one." And I was really mean to him. And so he left the farm crying, and he stopped and talked to his little brother before he left in the yard. And Ryan said to him, "Mom, she's just worried about your math. She doesn't mean it." Anyway, long story short, I got a phone call half an hour later saying that he was on the gym floor. They didn't know if he had tripped or he had collapsed. And I just assumed it was something that wasn't a big deal, like he'd fainted or he had a snowboarding injury. I thought maybe something related to that. And so we went into town, and when we drove down Main Street, I could see the ambulance at the school a few blocks down. And I said to my husband, "Oh, let's just go to the school." And he said, "No, we'll just wait for him at the hospital." And so when we went to the hospital, we waited for probably 10 or 15 minutes. And then they brought him in, and as they were wheeling him in on the stretcher, they were doing compressions. And I just assumed he'd be fine. So I went into the main room because, of course, I work there. It's just normal. I would be in there with the patient and particularly my kid. And so they were doing compressions. And so I had my camera in my purse and I started taking some pictures, just thinking, man, these are going to be great photos to show at Brock's wedding and, at his grad and all this stuff. And then about 10 or 15 minutes into the resuscitation, the doctor walked up and he said to my husband, "I'm sorry, but I don't think we're going to be able to save your son." And I was just like, how does this even happen? Sudden cardiac arrest doesn't happen to kids. It happens to old people. And it was just, and so he died. And that night, I just remember I climbed up on the stretcher beside him and I was just laying beside him, and I remember I put my head on his heart and his chest, and it was just silence. And I just remember thinking, this is beyond belief. I can't even believe that I'm here dealing with this right now. And so after Brock died, I decided that I needed to research and find out if there was other kids that went through this. And after his autopsy, the guy at the autopsy clinic said that he said, although we can't say it's cardiac arrest, it's cardiac arrest. And that's what that's basically what lots of these young people die from. And I was like, how many young people is there? I've never heard of one before. And so that's what really caught my attention is that there's more than just Brock. So that was a long answer to that question.
I'm sorry. Were there any symptoms that he had before, like any sort of chest pain, or did he have any heart abnormalities?
You know what? He was just a really fit, athletic kid, but I didn't think that there was any symptoms or anything. But you know, in retrospect, I see that when he was 8, he had an abnormal chest X-ray that said that a part of the heart looked enlarged, and there was never any follow-up. I never even got a phone call about it. And then when he was in the party program, which is a drug and alcohol awareness program that they have in grade 9, he was actually the kid selected to be hooked up to the ambulance EKG machine, and it was very abnormal. And the teacher that was with them made them unhook the leads and then hook them back up again, and it was still totally abnormal. But they just thought, here's this 15-year-old boy, he's super fit and healthy, so they said it's fine, it's just the equipment, and gave him the tracing. And that was a year before he died. And then 2 weeks before he died, he was standing in the kitchen and he was hanging onto his chest, and he said, Mom, my heart hurts, my chest is hurting. And I was like, you're fine, you know, I was busy, it's farming, we were doing seeding, and I just said, you know, everybody has chest pain sometimes. And so there were all these little things that, like I think I was telling you before, that if he would have been 60, I would have taken him to the hospital right then and got him checked out. But because he was 16, I was like, oh, you're fine. And so then, yeah, he died 2 weeks later. And so I think, you know, if parents were more aware of sudden cardiac arrest being a thing that could potentially kill your kid, I think that we would be way more proactive in heart screening.
Yeah, I mean, I know the only reason why I would get my heart checked out so often was because it was something that they detected from birth, and it was something that my mom had. So because of that, they were more aware of it with me. But even then, we never knew that anything like this could ever happen. I guess it's been pretty life-changing, but I know you've done some great things in Brock's story and bringing awareness to sudden cardiac arrest. So how's your life, I guess, changed since Brock's accident?
My life has become dedicated to changing outcomes for other kids and families. Like, I've become a much more grateful person. Like, I am so grateful now for every interaction with my kids and my family. And I try not to ever leave things when I'm like, if I'm mad, I always try and make sure that I say, I love you. And I don't ever leave things ugly anymore, because I so regret having that fight with Brock that night. So that's been life changing. I think too, it's super powerful for me to meet survivors like you. Like, it's because it brings hope to a hopeless situation. So I think that those are the things that have changed the most. Is I've become much more full of love and gratitude and appreciation for all the little things that I totally took for granted before. I'd say that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I would say that that's something that my family learned too. Um, of course, I got a second chance to be with them, but I know, like, I think I had like an argument with my mom, and now I try to do the same thing, which I'm not very successful at sometimes, but um, I do try to just kind of remind them that I love them very much.
Yeah.
I know, like you said, Project Brock, you've been doing such amazing things for a lot of people. what are some milestones that you have reached through all this, through everything that you're doing?
I think one of the big milestones is that the Alberta Health Services EMS team really stood behind me right away, and they came and they apologized for their part in Brock's failure to be resuscitated with the dispatch call and things. And they were really eager to create change with me, because nobody goes to work expecting that you're going to lose a patient, and everybody tries their very best. But there was systemic changes that needed to happen, and one of the things was in the 911 call, the dispatcher didn't recognize vaginal respirations and wasn't educated enough about that. And so we wrote a letter together to the International Academies of Emergency Dispatch, and Dr. Clausen and his team were phenomenal, and they got Brock's 911 call and reviewed it, and then they made changes to the dispatch protocol and put in Brock's law so that the dispatcher was much more proactive about checking if there was an AED, and rechecking, and then once the AED came, to make sure that it was used. And so that affected 29,000 dispatchers worldwide. So that was huge. And I think right away too, I could see that even though there was an AED at the school, nobody knew how to use it. And nobody was educated on the huge chance of survival if you could use it right away. And so I formed a little team of moms here and dads and people who were really wanting to create change. And we did CPR training, and we put AEDs in all of the Northern Alberta schools, and then have them placed in different schools around Southern Alberta. And then we've got them, we went down, and I trained all the way down to California. I went to conferences in New Zealand, worldwide. We went to conferences speaking about this and about the prevalence of cardiac arrest, and how we don't have enough data to collect to make people aware of the number of kids that are being impacted. And so now I'm working with the Alberta EMS team and CanRock, and I'm trying to do more research with the International Academies of Emergency Dispatch to try and collect numbers so that we have a better idea of the number of kids that are actually having cardiac arrest. And I'm also trying to get more CPR training and medical emergency drills in schools, because I think that if we started having kids like fire drills, if they had medical emergency drills with CPR and AEDs right from kindergarten all the way through, people would just know. It would be just like when a fire alarm goes off, everybody knows what to do. If somebody collapses, they would know what to do. And I think that we need to better educate our citizens and our bystanders so that they effortlessly will be able to react rapidly if somebody collapses, rather than just, assuming they're fine or walking past. So I think those are some of the biggest highlights. There's been a lot of grassroots kind of changes and efforts that we've done.
Yeah, well, I mean, it all sounds amazing. I know that going back to what you said about the 911 call and the agonal breaths, I was very lucky. Patty, my sister, did not know what was going on, and she thought that I was struggling to breathe, but that she didn't know that my heart stopped or anything like that, because, like I said, it was super unexpected. But I was so glad that whenever the dispatcher asked her if I was breathing, that she said no. I think we researched it, and if you say yes, then that would imply that their heart is still beating, so they don't guide you through CPR. So that was one of the things that I thought was pretty, I guess, impacting, that if you see somebody with abdominal breaths and you mistake it for they're actually just struggling to breathe, or they're still taking in air, and the dispatcher asks you if you need guided CPR because they're not breathing and you say no, then that could be completely life-changing for that person.
Totally.
Now that, I mean, I guess we're both a lot more educated about sudden cardiac arrest now that we've had experiences with it. What is something that you learned about sudden cardiac arrest that you know now, but you previously didn't know?
One of the things that I learned about sudden cardiac arrest that I know now was how easy it is to use an AED and how important it is to use it rapidly. Like, I did not know. In fact, right after Brock died, one of the EMS guys brought me an AED and I was scared to turn it on because I'd never seen it. There's all these, TV shows that make it all look dangerous and scary, which is such crap. I think that learning that AEDs are so simple and easy was one of the biggest things. And the second thing was learning about how prevalent it is in the younger population. Like, I was super surprised that the number of kids that die, or even young adults, like anybody under 40 that has a sudden cardiac arrest, like all of these people that could have had like simple tests like ECGs or EKGs and echocardiogram ultrasounds, and like there's so many things that we could do to be preventing these deaths so that you are diagnosed before the sudden cardiac arrest ever happens. And that was just, I thought, why are we not doing something? Like, we have all of these immunization programs and hearing tests and, looking after all of these other issues, but yet the most important thing, a person's heart, we're not looking after that. Like, we'll go to the dentist every year, but yet it's too expensive to do checks on our heart. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. So that's one thing is I think that as a citizenry, we need to educate people on how important heart health is and getting that checked. Like, the other thing that I didn't know was how difficult it is for parents to get heart screening or any sort of heart test done on their kids, because doctors are completely unaware of how many cardiac arrests in kids. And so they're resistant even to doing an EKG. Like, I've had moms go in and they say, my friend lost her son, and then the doctor will be like, no, you don't need that. And I think that, like, seriously, we, like, going back to the dentist thing, like every year we get dentist checkups, we'll get x-rays on our teeth, we get all these things. So we need to have a program in place so that people can have their kids' hearts checked and everybody around them, because lots of times, of course, you don't find the heart things until you go into cardiac arrest, and that's where we need to have everybody trained to react quickly. So I was oblivious. I had no idea before Brock's death. I was stupid.
That's true. I didn't know that it was the #1 killer in the US, and I guess Canada. I read that on your website. I remember seeing that too. I just find it just absurd that since it's not something tangible, it's not something that we can see with our eyes. It's not like you see everybody's heart normal and then you see something, you can see something wrong with yours and that's why you get it checked out. I feel like that's one of the things that really just makes it that much more difficult. It's not like if you have a chipped tooth, you're like, oh, I gotta go to the dentist, or if you have cavities or something like that. But with your heart, it's a completely different ball game. You just can't see it, which is, I guess, like
Totally.
ever. I know a lot of the things with my mom's insurance, you have to have like a recommendation from a certain doctor to get it, and if you don't have like a reason behind it, then the insurance will cover it. Which, if you just wanted to do a heart check on your kid and your insurance doesn't cover it, I feel like that's why a lot of people also don't do it, at least in the US, from what I know, from what our insurance is. Which again is just crazy. I think it should all just be like a regular pediatric check and keep on doing those every single time they go to the doctor, ever since you're a baby. Because I know it happens to babies too, which again, absurd. I didn't even know. Now that, I guess, like I said, we're both a lot more educated and we know a lot more about SCA, which a lot of people should know but don't. What is some things that you wish that people knew about sudden cardiac arrest to raise awareness?
One of the things that I wish people knew was how important it is for them to be proactive. And I think the most important thing is that they are the most important thing. As a bystander, you are either the angel that saves a life or the Grim Reaper. You get to decide whether or not that person lives or dies. If you are with somebody and they collapse, you have the tools to save their life. And I think that that's what I think people need to be empowered. I think that everybody is so scared of hurting someone that they'll stand back or they'll hesitate and they'll say, oh, EMS is the one that saves lives. And no, it's not EMS, it's you. You are the one that has more power than a doctor, than EMS, than anybody. You are the only thing standing between that person's life and death. And even if you do something wrong, it's good. You're trying. Like, I think that that's the other thing is that we need to have people not be afraid of failing and not be afraid of doing something wrong. We are so quick to condemn people for not doing things perfectly, which is such bullshit. Like, we need to have it so that people are empowered and celebrated for trying. So, taking the fear out of the situation, taking the apprehension away from being a lifesaver.
Yeah, I know that once you're researching this, I think the bystander rate of like the percentage of people in my community in the area that I live in that will help you is 14%. So if I had 100 people around me that just didn't know who I was, about 14 of them, maybe even less, maybe a little more, would even try to help me, which is already so low. If you think about it, 100 able people that are watching you die and they'll just walk by.
Totally.
I was very lucky to have my sister. She didn't even know what CPR was. It wasn't until the dispatcher guided her. But I don't think I would have had the outcome that I did if it wasn't for being surrounded by people that loved me and that just wanted, that knew that something was wrong, just wanted to see me come out on the other side. Because if I was, like I said, going on a run, I think I went on a run earlier that day, the likelihood of me being where I am today would not have been the same as having my family members there that care. So now that we all know what cardiac arrest is, we're all CPR trained and we're on the same mission as you are to try to educate more people about this because it's just horrible and it's very unspoken about considering how many lives it takes every year. I know that we kind of covered most of it, but is there anything else that you want to add?
I would just like to add that I think that it's very powerful that people like you and I come together to create teams for change. I think that it is so important that instead of just waiting for things to gradually change, I think it's so important that we step up and we demand change. We demand that instead of losing, I think in the States, it's like 375 or 400,000 people a year that you guys lose. And in Canada, the stats are 40 to 70,000. And because there's no database that, and especially for kids, there's no database. The cancers, like, they have a cancer registry of every single person that gets cancer and what kind of cancer, and why do we not have that for cardiac arrest? It kills so many people. And I think that we need to demand that our resources be put into helping and finding out, because without data, without numbers, without knowing, it's like it's a secret. Nobody knows the number of kids that are impacted or the number of adults that are impacted. And for one of the things that bugs me is that for kids, like when Brock's autopsy results came back, it was just listed as unexplained sudden death. And so it's not even captured in a cardiac registry. It's just unexplained sudden death. And so all these kids that are dying of sudden cardiac arrest are not captured in the sudden cardiac arrest data. So it's just an unexplained sudden death. It goes into a different category. So how the heck are we supposed to figure out how many kids or young people are dying if they don't even capture that data? So capturing data, collaboration. I think that we need to work together and we need to form powerful teams of change makers, of voices that, like, for example, you are a miracle. Like, did you buy your sister a present?
I bought her with love. Sorry.
I think you need to buy your sister a present because, you know, sometimes sisters fight. It was a good thing you didn't have a fight that day.
Yeah.
But it is delightful because, and not to say that everybody has to be an advocate for awareness, because there's some parents that literally can't. They are so broken that this is not their path, and that's okay. But the ones that would like to, you know, create change and work together, I think it's really important that we do that.
Yeah.
And especially victims, you know, some victims of cardiac arrest are incapable of going out and making any, you know, changes whatsoever. So kudos to you.
Thank you. I mean, you too. I think, honestly, what our families and everything that has gone through has been just a mess. But I'm glad that everything that you're doing, piece by piece, even though we don't have nearly enough people speaking about it and bringing awareness to it, the things that we do will eventually help others, and that's really what just kind of makes it all worth it.
Totally. Yeah.
Looks at my website or your website or goes to one of your CPR trainings, and then maybe 2 or 3 years down the road gets to use that CPR on somebody and save their lives. I think that's the most wonderful thing. And it's sad that the only way that sudden cardiac arrest was brought to my attention was after I went through it. But now that I see all these numbers and all these news and all just everything about it, I just can't believe I didn't hear about it before. I'm on my phone all the time. I look at the news and nothing, absolutely nothing. It wasn't until everything that happened that I really just educated myself. But I hope that nobody else has to go through this, and that they can listen to the both of us and just really learn and get their ish together to see.
Yeah.
This is affecting a lot of people every day, every second. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because I look at you and I think like you're the same age as Brock when he died. And, you know, just such a waste. Like you have so much left, like so much life in you, so much left to give, so much stuff that you have to do. And I just think of these kids whose lives are cut short. And then like, it's such a shame, such a waste of a vibrant, extraordinary life. And I think that that's, you know, it's so powerful to have the mix of old me and young you coming together to be a force for change. I love this. And I think that, again, once we can get CPR and skill drills, AED, medical emergency drills into schools and getting all of our kids trained in schools, I think that's what's going to really, really make a difference. Heart screening and training in schools so that we have more awareness.
Yeah.
So,
and like I said, we're up to do anything and everything that will possibly help. So if there's any way that I can possibly collaborate with y'all or rope you in somewhere, just
yes.
do something, because you're just so amazing. I know I looked at your page and I was trying to hold back tears just now, but it impacted me. So I just knew I had to email you, and you were the sweetest person ever. So thank you so, so much.